Thank you. That's a very a good question. Briefly, let me just give you a backdrop from where I come so you would understand my underpinning for the impact. I'm from the Department of Science and Technology, and in South Africa, the Department of Science and Technology, we are the custodians of traditional knowledge. One of the questions is traditional knowledge science or not science? So, and we ask ourselves, who defines science? So, within our context, traditional knowledge is science. So, within the Nagoya Protocol foresees three scenarios: access to genetic resources, access to genetic resources with the traditional knowledge, and traditional knowledge access to the tradition. So we are in terms of the second and third scenarios. So the Department of Environmental Affairs, they look more at the the issue of access to the genetic resource. So wherever there's issues of traditional knowledge, it's the Department of Science and Technology. Coming back to your question is what we see the impact. The impact has to relate to the negotiations at the World Intellectual Property Rights Organization. And you cannot divorce the issues of one international forum with the other. And the issue of the World Intellectual Property, we are going absolutely nowhere. So the Nagoya Protocol has to complement the World Intellectual, because the issues of disclosure is absolutely important, particularly for developing countries. So in terms of the impact, I see absolutely very little impact of the Nagoya Protocol because there is no political will on the part of the user countries. In terms of the political will, the EU has published the regulations in 2015, but the regulations are for a developing country. It's meaningless. It's meaningless. It's just the ratification. Their ratification is only in compliance so that they could access the genetic resources. So I don't see any major impact. As I see this as any other protocol that will in time will peter out. So unless we have political will from user countries, surprisingly so, it is only the EU as a user country has ratified the protocol. Countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and more importantly Japan, which the Nagoya is derived from Japan, and they're not parties to the Nagoya Protocol. So you can see the political will, and political will is in line with the impact. So as long as you don't have everyone at the party, the impact will be absolutely minimal. So I'll be optimistic if we have more user countries, then you see a greater impact. I was one of the South African negotiators for the Nagoya Protocol. I've now decided that now it's become another talk shop. It's going to waste time. So I've decided the COP in Cancun I will not attend until we have the political will from user countries. Yes, in terms of prior Nagoya, we had a lot of cases of biopiracy. Not so much in terms of institutions within the country, but we had, if you look at, we had Schwabe, a pharmaceutical in Germany, withdrawing their patents. We had Nestec, which is a subsidiary of Nestle, withdrawing their patents on rooibos. Rooibos is endemic and it's indigenous to South Africa. So there are quite a lot of cases where we had earlier on, prior to our own regulations, we had the Hoodia, and so there are cases, but post ratification, we ratified the protocol in 2013. So 2013, I think a lot of institutions, research organizations, pharmaceuticals, industry are more cautious because it's more now of an embarrassment once a country had ratified the protocol and they are involved in activities which are contrary to the protocol. Yes, in order to give effect to the Nagoya Protocol, South Africa, we are the first country that we have now started off with legislation where we have it's a legislation called the Indigenous Knowledge Bill, and it's a hybrid of the negotiations at the World Intellectual Property Rights Organization and articles of the Nagoya Protocol. So what we have done, we have selected pertinent articles out of these negotiations and we married them together. For example, if you look at the Nagoya Protocol, we took the article on transboundary and we've inserted that into the legislation. We've taken the definitions of access and benefit sharing and we've inserted that in our. So we are giving effect to the Nagoya Protocol in a very roundabout way, but the direct effect of the Nagoya Protocol that falls within the mandate of the Department of Environmental Affairs. In terms of the other articles of our legislation, is we've taken the negotiations at the World Intellectual Property and we've subsumed that into our legislation. For example, the scope is identical. We've taken the subject matter. And why we say we're the only country in the world is that other countries, they have developed legislation for biodiversity only, for for traditional cultural expression separately and traditional knowledge separately. What we've done, we've combined the three into one legislation. So that is the beauty part of the legislation that we have. That's a very good question. I think I'm being labeled as the person that's keep on asking questions, and particularly from user countries, in terms of. I think it's a very useful and beneficial because user countries in discussions outside the workshop, user countries are seeing the merits of what I'm asking them, and it's important. We need this engagement. We need this healthy discussion because only by talking you'll understand the other person's point of view or the other country's point of view. And yes, with my presentation, it was quite good because there was lots of questions that were asked that are pertinent to indigenous peoples, and I enjoyed that, and I'm a supporter and a protagonist of rights of indigenous communities. So yes, I think we need to have more discussions like this, and I'm very appreciative of the government of Mexico of having such discussions, and I think we should have more in other countries. We should actually have a discussion like this in a user country. You know what I mean? And so they could see our perspective as much as we seeing their perspective. It's high time they see the scenario from the eyes of a developing country.